it's a very well-known fact that female founders and women of color, in particular founders, receive less than 0.1% of funding. I still need money to run the business. And it's sort of, had to kind of make me much more resourceful than I've ever been. Like, one of the things that my dad used to say to me growing up, time is money. He always said that. I've known the saying since I was like 7 years old, which is a bit random for a 7-year-old to know. But that was kind of instilled into me. And I think until recent, I really realized the value of it. Yeah. Which is, I need to protect my time because it is very valuable in how I kind of want to split my energy up. 90% of the clothes that we donate to charity shops like Oxfam, they end up in landfills in Asian and African countries, such as my own. And I couldn't help but feel I was guilty. I was part of the problem. I live in London. I'm, so lucky to be living in this Western, fully developed nation. But it turns out we are consuming at crazy amounts. And that too, fashion, which seems like it's meant to be so much fun. It's a way to express ourselves. But there's actually a really ugly side to it. It's the 4th most polluting industry in the world. Women are paying for their childcare from their rental income. Yeah. People are saving up for their mortgages. They're saving up for their holidays. They're saving up for the next dinner or cocktail. Yeah. There's like a huge range of it. And I'm so proud of the fact that, while doing this, we've also made people rethink how they look at fashion. Instead of buying knockoffs from fast fashion brands, people are actually strategically investing in the quality pieces and supporting independent brands.
My name is Claudia Green, and this is She Did That, the podcast shining a spotlight on remarkable women who are breaking barriers and proving that greatness knows no gender. From female founders who have raised millions of pounds, the investors changing the landscape as we know it, to survivors of tragedy who have achieved the amazing, and many more. We will share the stories of these incredible women who will inspire and empower you. In order to support us and these women, please subscribe on your viewing or listening channel of choice so we can continue our mission of sharing the stories that should and need to be heard.
Today's guest is the ultimate fashionista. She started the UK's very first peer-to-peer fashion lending company, enabling people to wear designer outfits for a fraction of the cost. I am so pleased to introduce Eshita Kabra Davies. Eshita, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited.
Thank you for having me, Claudia.
I am actually, would I be a customer? I lend my dresses on by rotation.
You're a rotator. I love that.
I'm a rotator, and I think that I've made, like, on average, about $250 a month.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
How long have you been doing it for?
Not long. I think it stemmed from, I went a bit mad, bought a few dresses. I'm like very careful with what I buy, but when it's evening stuff, I'll go all out. So spending like £500 on designer dresses, then I was like, well, I'm not going to wear it again. It's been on Instagram. That's terrible. So I was like, oh, I'll try, but I'm not sure it will actually work. And I was like, oh my God.
You've been getting rental requests.
Yeah.
I love that.
I know.
I love that for you. That means you also selected probably like pretty high demand items, which is great.
I feel like I did because I get most of it off.
You have good taste.
Or Instagram just tells me what to buy. But let's go back. I want to hear everything about the by rotation journey. Did a bit of research on you before. And I read you were born in India, is that correct?
That's
and then
correct.
you grew up in Singapore, lived in the US for a bit?
Yes.
And then came here.
Yeah.
Okay, I've covered it.
Yeah.
So how long have you been in the UK?
You've done the right kind of stalking.
Okay, perfect.
You know it all.
So what brought you to the UK?
Oh, university. So I did my undergraduate at Cass Business School, part of City University, London, actually kind of nearby from where we're filming. And then right after uni, I actually worked out of undergrad at Standard Life Investments. So for the first 6.5 years of my career, I worked in investments.
And how was that?
It was great. Very different to what I'm doing now, obviously.
But really different. But then arguably a bit more reassurance that you know how to look at numbers.
Yeah, it definitely prepared me with a lot of, I would say, hard skills. So, things like being analytical, making decisions on the spot. Because when you're working market hours, often you're also deciding if you're participating in deals within the hour. You kind of have to decide. You have to like have a good reason. You have to be a good decision maker. You have to be really good when it comes to professionalism and have a strong work ethic. Like you have to be at your desk, especially when I was on the trading floor by latest 7 a.m. So usually I'd get in by like
brutal.
I'd get in by like 6:45 a.m. to make sure there was enough time and I'd read enough of the news before I was going to share with my team what happened overnight, how the market's going to start in the morning. So yeah, I mean, it prepared me with a lot of hard skills. I definitely would say things like financial modeling and, you know, making decisions and actually becoming more confident in myself as a professional individual. I think these are the three things that I would highly recommend to anyone who's, you know, starts their career, who is thinking about starting off their career in a corporate sort of background.
Yeah, I think there are pros and cons. It can be so tough being in a corporate environment, particularly when you don't feel like your personality particularly suits. Like for me, I started off in a corporate environment and I'm the opposite of that. So I can see how it's challenging for some people, but then it's really beneficial later on in your journey.
I think it's training that I would really recommend to anyone who, especially, you know, right out of uni, if you're not sure what you want to do with your life, but you know you're hardworking, you're smart, you've got the right attitude, you can actually like use that time working at a big firm that pays you a good, consistent salary to figure out what is your true calling. And you can make all the mistakes that you need to make at these bigger companies because for them, it's not that expensive. You know, when you're starting your own business or you're working at a startup, it's just like, you know, finances can be so tough and tight there that making mistakes is very, very costly.
Yeah, absolutely. But arguably you're quite well equipped probably to budget nicely and manage your money.
I've had to, just because I think especially with the cost of living crisis, I mean, that's like been, I guess in a way kind of good for buy rotation because, you know, people are now much more conscious in how they go shopping and they're looking for better deals and they can find them on buy rotation because you can rent items for 10% of retail value. But at the same time, that's also put, you know, funding at a squeeze. And it's a very well-known fact that female founders and women of color, in particular founders, receive less than 0.1% of funding. So I still need money to run the business. And it's sort of, you know, had to kind of make me much more resourceful than I've ever been. I think that's a good exercise for any founder because traditionally I've seen in the venture space, there's been this huge rush and almost like a huge focus specifically to raise money.
Yes.
There's never a good conversation about how's this money spent? Is it being spent wisely? Is it actually, what is the point of raising millions and billions of funding?
And I think people, when someone raises, say, 10 million, they perceive that as a huge amount, which it is a huge amount. But actually, when you work out where you need to spend it, I worked with a startup recently and they raised 10 million. And I was like, this is amazing. You must be secure for like 3 years. And they said like, our cash burn rate is 900,000 a month. So I realized like, oh, actually, that's not that good.
No.
So it totally depends on the business. Do you think there's anything to do with your upbringing that made you more entrepreneurial? Well, you must be pretty driven to have been able to go to a great university and then get the skills to go into corporate life and be a financial analyst. But is there anyone in particular or any influences?
Investment analyst, not financial. It's
Investment analyst?
Yes. I guess, you know, my parents are entrepreneurs and my dad definitely has a story of, you know, kind of like the rags to riches story. I wouldn't call it like a fairy tale or whatever because he still works very hard. But I think growing up around them, I kind of learned a lot of skills and, you know, I guess just like the way of thinking, you know, the mindset that you have as an entrepreneur, as someone who's kind of an underdog, I think that was instilled in me, you know, as like, you know, just a child in primary school where my dad would teach us life learning skills, as he called them, on how to be a good negotiator.
Oh, I love that. People go to university for that.
Well, it's funny because back when I was, I think this was maybe when I was like 11 or 12, I'd be like, it's Sunday, all my friends are rollerblading downstairs in the condominium. Like, what am I doing here? I don't want to sit here and hang out with my dad giving me life learning skills. But it's funny because it's something that I think about now quite often. And I'm like, actually, some of the things that he taught me, they are very obvious to me, not so obvious to some of my peers. And that's because I was raised with these principles and values from a very young age. Like one of the things that my dad used to say to me growing up, time is money. He always said that. You know, I've known this saying since I was like 7 years old, which is a bit random for a 7-year-old to know. But that was kind of instilled into me. And I think until recent, I really realized the value of it. Yeah. Which is I need to protect my time because it is very valuable in how I kind of want to split my energy up to get the most and do the most with my life. And then another thing that he said was money saved is money earned, which like, I don't know, it sounds like, what does that even mean? Yeah. Like, so, you know, like, what does that saying even mean? It just sounds repetitive and silly. But having gone through, you know, ups and downs in our business while running as an entrepreneur, I've kind of realized I get it. It's about not being opulent. You know, it's just because you raised $10 million, not being like, let's spend it because we actually raised that money. Let's go and actually spend it. But actually it's to be as resourceful as possible. And I think that's also the way that, you know, Biorotation was founded. It's to make use of what you have and use it till the fullest by sharing it with others.
Yeah, I recently did a course at London Business School, and it was like an entrepreneurship day. And the professor, he was a highly successful entrepreneur from the retail space. And he said, every invoice you get, make sure the payment terms are as long as physically possible. Stretch every single thing out. You don't want to be paying things like, keep it as late as possible so that you can keep your cash flow strong and positive. And that kind of stayed with me. So I renegotiated all of my invoices to make them much longer payment terms.
Get them to pay you as soon as possible. 7 days.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the problem though as well, when you're waiting for people to pay you.
Exactly.
So you can be like broke, where you're like poor in the moment, but you know there's like 10 grand coming next week. So you're kind of like, card's getting declined for milk this week, but next week I'm going to be balling.
So funny.
It's the life of an entrepreneur.
Well, you won't be buying the milk, you'll be buying the martini.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, wasn't talking from personal experience or anything. So, and how does your dad feel now about you being an entrepreneur? Was he ever surprised, or did he think, I kind of knew you would be?
When I was 11 years old, I was selling my graphic design online on this thing called Neopets. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
I've heard of that, yeah.
It's like virtual pets, kind of like Tamagotchi.
Yeah.
But
I love Tamagotchi.
Yes, but on your dial-up, desktop computer back in the day. So I used to have a lot of like pen pals, like online friends. And they were all across the world. And my parents were like, what is she doing online at 2 a.m.? Is she looking at inappropriate things? You know, they were sort of suspicious. And I was like, no, I'm making money on my PayPal. And they were like, what is PayPal? Because PayPal just launched, I think 2 or 3 years before when I was doing all of this. This was like 2002. And they're like, why do you have like $20? Like, what did you do to make that? And I was like, I made designs, I made layouts. And they're like, what are layouts? So anyway, so I think they always knew I had this sort of like creative entrepreneurial flair. And, you know, I was sure that I wanted to be an entrepreneur at some point in my life. I just didn't really know what it would be for, which is why working in investments for 6.5 years until I found this affinity for something that really made sense for me to launch and run such a business for. That took time. But I remember when I was going to quit my full-time career, my dad was like, are you sure you want to do this? Like, I think that your generation sees entrepreneurs as, you know, being a founder and all of that is very glamorous, which is great. But to be honest, it's really not that glamorous. It never has been glamorous for me. You know, for me, it has been a means to an end to support, you know, your mom and like the family. But do you really want to walk away from a successful career? Because you'll never be the same person that you were. And I was like, well, no, I'm not sure because you were so successful and you were telling me not to. But then my husband really convinced me to. He said, you know, like you weren't fulfilled. You know, you were using, you know, on the weekdays, you'd like hang out with your friends. You'd go for after work drinks. On the weekend, it'd be Pilates and brunch and shopping. Like is that what life is about? Like, no, you want to do something more with your life. You've got an itch for it. So just give it a shot and see what happens. And if it doesn't work out, you can always come back. You can always go back to this career. And since then, COVID and a bunch of other things happened. And I think my dad is now very proud.
I bet.
But he will not say it to my face. But his friends always congratulate me. So I think that he's telling them stuff.
You're all over the internet. When I was doing research on you, you're everywhere.
You're like, oh
all
God.
over the internet. No, it was really helpful.
You're like, what do I read?
No, but it's great. Like, you've had a lot of exposure. People love what you're doing.
Thank you.
Which is why we should launch into, how did you come up with the idea for Birotation?
Yeah, the story, and this is a true story, is I was planning my honeymoon, which is to Rajasthan in India, where I was born. I wanted to bring my husband there because I wanted to reconnect with my roots, and he's not Indian. So, I hadn't been back for like 14 years. And while I was planning the honeymoon, I started thinking about all the outfits I wanted to wear in the beautiful desert of Rajasthan. And that's when I started thinking, like, oh, it'd be so cool to like borrow clothes, to rent clothes. Why don't we have anything like that in the UK or even Europe for that matter? And that's when I started sort of researching the global fashion rental landscape. I actually did it within the same spreadsheet where I was planning a honeymoon as well.
Oh,
no, it's true. That's what I was saying. There's actually like a screenshot that my team now regularly refers to see how it all began. And when I was actually on my honeymoon, I witnessed a lot of textile waste firsthand in my suburban hometown. So not even like the populated cities of Jaipur and Udaipur, but actually just a suburban hometown known for textile. And I just couldn't help but feel I was part of the problem. After doing very quick research, again on Google, you can see that about 90% of the clothes that we donate to charity shops like Oxfam, they end up in landfills in Asian and African countries, such as my own. And I couldn't help but feel I was guilty. I was part of the problem. I live in London. I'm, so lucky to be living in this Western, fully developed nation. But it turns out we are consuming at crazy amounts. And that too, fashion, which seems like it's meant to be so much fun. It's a way to express ourselves. But there's actually a really ugly side to it. It's the fourth most polluting industry in the world, which sounds crazy, but makes sense.
That's nuts.
Yeah, but it makes sense because we're all wearing clothes every day. Some of us are wearing completely new clothes every single day. You've got fast fashion giants who I won't name in this because they don't need more publicity, but they're shipping 3 billion items a year.
And I've seen some of the videos of how the factory workers are treated, and it's the most horrific thing I've ever seen.
But there's like 7 billion people in the world. So why are they shipping 3 billion clothing items a year?
It's no, they're charging £7 for a dress.
Yeah, I couldn't help but feel I was part of the problem and I was not educated enough. But, I didn't want it to be kind of like doom and gloom.
No, you want to make it fun.
Yeah. And I was like, well, look, if someone who's as educated as me and can afford to be better doesn't know what to do, why don't I come up with a solution? And doesn't know about the problems within this industry, why don't I come up with a solution that will appeal to more people, more women such as myself? And that's when this idea for renting fashion, I wanted to take it a step further from all the incumbents who all have inventories, subscription plans, warehouses.
Oh, so they have to keep other people's clothing, essentially.
It's not even others. It's their own. They bought it from the brand.
Oh, yeah. I see. Okay.
Or they make it just for rental.
So it's not strictly peer-to-peer then?
No, it isn't at all. There was no one doing peer-to-peer.
You were the first.
Well, I wouldn't say the first because I think there have been some who've tried to do it, but it wasn't the right time. They were maybe too early. This conversation around sustainability, like things like Extinction Rebellion, it's still kind of new. It's like 2016. That's still relatively new if you think about it. So the concept of like sustainable fashion is becoming more and more, it's after the Rana Plaza collapse that happened where thousands of people died in Bangladesh. So I think it's only come into light very recently in like 2018, 2019. So all of these other sort of peer-to-peer fashion lending platforms that were born, they were maybe a bit too early. They were ahead of their time. But I kind of saw the emergence of technologies such as Airbnb and Uber as really like you know, if we're happy to lend our entire home to a stranger to sleep in our bed, to shower in our shower.
I'm not willing to do that, but
yeah, but why not actually have a very small fraction of that, which is just one piece of your wardrobe or clothing, because stuff gets cleaned and laundered anyway. Like when you stay in a hotel, it's not like the bed sheets were completely new for you.
It's true.
Yeah, and the bathrobe, the fluffy, nice bathrobe, even in the best of best hotels, Claridge's or whatever, it's not a bathrobe that was made just for you. Someone else has worn it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Maybe Pierce Brosnan. That would be great. But we don't. Do you know what I mean?
Not at our size. We're a bit small for that.
But you know what I mean.
I know what you're saying.
So it just felt kind of obvious, seeing all these sharing economies take off. Why don't we just do it with fashion and clothes, where, you know, a lot of people on social media are using hashtags such as outfit of the day, and then you never see them repeating an outfit, right?
Yes.
So what about sharing what you already have with each other? And yeah, it was sort of like the sisterhood of the traveling dress. You know,
I like
to make
that.
to make it fun. And I always wanted it to be like a social network as well. And that's currently where we are today. So, you know, in 2024, we're more of a social network rather than like an e-com. So that's e-commerce kind of play. I'd say we've actually gone beyond a traditional fashion rental model. And yeah, for us, it's almost becoming like a media and a social network sort of app.
But apart from even, obviously, the sustainability piece is so incredibly important, but you're actually turning social norms on their head as well.
Yeah.
Because people go on Instagram, they see models or people they sort of know through another person, and they think, oh, they always look beautiful, and they tag their dresses, and then you go on and it's like Pat Bow, £1,200, and you're like, this is not accessible. So it's kind of bringing this new opportunity. And whether we like it or not, a lot of girls and women, they want to wear the things people are wearing at the moment. And, you know, some of them are beautiful pieces, but were not in the same sort of earning bracket to be able to do that. Whereas now, when you can rent that, more and more people can enjoy the designers that were previously completely inaccessible, which I think is so amazing.
Yeah.
Because I remember there was this, someone told me a story. They went to a party and it was that era where everyone was wearing Hervé Leger dresses. And this one girl was wearing like a very funny gold colored one. And they were like, well, she obviously got the gold one because that was the one that was in the sale. Otherwise she'd have like a primary color. And at the time I was like, who says that?
Yeah.
That's horrible. Also, whose parents bought them a £1,200 dress at the age of 18? Who?
Yes.
Because my parents would have laughed in my face. I used to get £20 to go to Topshop and have fun. So that's another issue in itself. But now you don't have that.
No.
Like you can be anyone, anywhere. And if you want to have a gown from Versace, you can.
Yeah, we've made it so much more democratized, you know, to have access to quality fashion, to designers that you never imagined, you know, having access to, or maybe you just want to experiment with them as well. Like, you know, there's that trend, right, which is wearing feathers like on your dress.
I have seen that. I don't think I could pull that off.
Same. And I was like, it's not really for me, but I rented something to see if it was for me. One thing was, the other thing wasn't. So the first dress I got a lot of compliments for. The second dress, I was like, I don't feel confident and comfortable in this. But it's so interesting because for me, I just decided overall the feathers trend is not for me, even if people like it on me. So it's nice to kind of experiment with your style. And I think it's, you know, on the topic of fashion, it's made me, who used to be a shopaholic from Singapore, it's made me much more conscious of my own shopping patterns. Like in the past, like when you go shopping, firstly, I don't like to go shopping with friends. I would go just with myself. But recently I went shopping with a friend and we did not buy anything. In the past, the way that I would look at shopping is like, it's a complete waste of time if you're just window shopping. Like the whole point is to make a list of things you need, go and get them, and don't take that much time. But this time I was like, actually, I'm just browsing to see what I like and what I don't like, and what is me and what isn't. And I think I've become much more confident about my own style.
Yeah.
Like now I actually know what suits me and what I'd like to invest, you know, like decent amount of money in for an item that I believe will stand the test of time because of its quality and because of the fact that I truly believe we will look good together even when I'm much older.
Yeah.
So I feel like buy rotations really helped me with my own confidence when it comes to fashion, style. And it's really made me, you know, transform my consumption habits. So like, I think one of the great things about the app is that when you're listing items, you can also see the total value of your entire wardrobe, which is great because like fashion is now an asset.
And then you feel a bit sick about what you spent.
That too, right? It puts you off. But then it also shows you what are your top most rented items, how much money you've made, so your return on investment. We've added a lot of my own investment, you know, themes and terms that I used to kind of look at back in the day into the buy rotation app, which I think is making our rotators realize that fashion is actually something that can be really financially empowering. It can actually be an activity when you go shopping as a strategic one, as like one that you use your mind for, not just a visual thing. Like I felt so proud of myself when I went on that window shopping trip with my friend and tried on a bunch of things, you know, all nice things, but I was like, none of them are really worth it because now I know my style and now I know what stuff is really worth. And it made me just feel very intelligent.
Yeah,
I know how to say no. And in the past, I didn't know.
Yeah,
Yes.
if you've got the money and you can do it and you say no, then that's not always the easiest thing to do. I was telling my dad and I was like, I told you fashion was an investment. And I showed him like my dashboard of what money I'd made.
Oh, I love that.
And he was like, what is that? And I showed him and like, he didn't even know what to say back to me because I was like, it is an investment, isn't it? And he was like, well, yeah, I didn't know that this thing sort of existed.
Well, it's so funny because now some of my friends who are working professional women have told me that their partners, even their male partners, have told them, I don't mind you going shopping anymore. Go and buy that dress from Reformation or Rixo or Zimmerman, because apparently all these women are making lots of money on this buy rotation app. You know, we've had women who've paid for their IVF journeys, who are paying for their childcare. Yeah. She's now saving up for her surrogacy. So so they remove the cancer cells. She's had like a positive, she's had some eggs that have been fertilized. So she has embryos now. Yeah. And now she's saving up for surrogate, which is also very expensive.
Yeah.
And she's doing it through her rental income while working full time in marketing. So I think when I founded Buy Rotation, for me, it seemed like something that I wanted for myself because I was a shopaholic who wanted access to the world's largest shared wardrobe, which we've created, and make a bunch of new friends. And, you know, it was meant to be fun and light, but it's become so much more than I ever imagined. You know, we're a part of people's everyday lives. We're probably a part of people's families as well. You know, women are paying for their childcare from their rental income. Yeah. People are saving up for their mortgages. They're saving up for their holidays. They're saving up for the next dinner or cocktail. Yeah. You know, there's like a huge range of it. And I'm so proud of the fact that, you know, while doing this, we've also made people rethink how they look at fashion. You know, instead of buying knockoffs from fast fashion brands, people are actually strategically investing in the quality pieces and supporting independent brands. There's so much I love about it. You
can tell how passionate you are, which is what I love.
But I think, you know, what really helps is like my team and I together, we've created this product, which I genuinely want to use. Like I want it for myself.
Oh yeah.
Even if I wasn't running it, I think I would use it every day, which I do.
I've definitely, I'm just like going into my first rental now. Oh, I love as in that. Where I'm renting for myself.
Oh, I love.
Which I said originally I'm never going to do. Yeah. Because I was like, oh no, I'm funny about it. Someone else has worn it. And so I said, I'm just going to put my clothes on there.
Yeah.
My friend was like, yeah, okay, fair enough. You know, if you're not renting from someone else. And then I saw it was actually a Zimmerman dress. And I was like, it's £1,000. Yes. That's ridiculous. Yes, exactly. And I was like, do you know what?
Try it.
I'll rent it. Or like, you know that Annie's Ibiza.
Yes, so expensive as well.
I can't say the name.
Cleopatra.
Yes. Yeah. They're stunning.
Yes.
And I was like, there's no way I'm going to spend £800.
No, I think it's 1,800.
Okay, so the worst ones are 800. They are so beautiful. And it's like, I can't imagine, regardless of how much money I have, I can't imagine putting that into
It's a lot.
a dress.
Yeah, it's a lot. And if it's something that's not really like a forever piece, it's more like a fun piece.
It's not your wedding dress. It's not really a forever piece, is it? It's not. Well, even a wedding dress isn't a forever piece, but you hand it down.
Yeah.
Actually, that leads me nicely into my next question. I don't have the up-to-date facts on what's going on, but I know that the government were floating the idea of taxing people on their side incomes for things like renting their clothes out. What are your, well, I think I know your views on it, but what are your views on it and how devastating that could be?
I mean, that rule has been around, I believe, since 2016. It's just BBC did an article which kind of, rattled everyone, I think, a few months ago. But yeah, I mean, I think what's a shame is that it's really about they're kind of not understanding the fact that secondhand as an industry should be celebrated.
Yes.
And I think £1,000 as the allowance is a bit too little, because you want companies such as Vinted, Depop, eBay, and all of that to thrive. You don't want companies such as Shein and Temu and all of that to thrive, like that throwaway culture. So it's a bit of a shame. And I know it's also, they have this thing about whether it's like you've made profit on it, but the whole point is that secondhand actually does become cheaper. So how can you prove how much profit you've made on something, right? So it's a bit of a shame, and I think that the allowance needs to be higher, but it's something that has been around for a while.
Yeah.
And again, we obviously cannot give advice to people on tax, but a lot of people are already using other platforms such as eBay and Vinted and Depop beyond buy rotation. So they do need to monitor their incomings from all of them.
Yeah, but how many people are just not going to declare it? I mean, the government are going to have to hire about 100,000 new workers just to like track people on, or you made 150 over your 1,000 allowance. You're in trouble now.
Yeah.
I think it's quite a difficult thing to police, that sort of thing. But anyway, I'm not telling anyone to evade tax. But I do think it's unfair considering what you're doing. It's helping the planet. It's helping society. So it seems kind of nuts to penalize people.
Yeah, and you'd think that the UK is more forward thinking when it comes to things like sustainability and, pioneering secondhand and pushing forward new technologies. But I think this is a bit of an oversight, and it just seems more of like it just seems like there hasn't been much commercial thought put into place by whoever planned and passed this rule.
No, I don't think there's much thought into any of the rules.
Yeah, I think the tax allowance should be higher.
Yeah.
We should promote this.
Yes.
Like, sure, it should be taxed, but I think the allowance should be higher than 1,000. 1,000 could very quickly just be like you reselling, I don't know, like an old piece of furniture that you inherited from someone in your family. That's suddenly seen as profit because maybe the value of that is actually zero.
Yeah, I agree. Personally, I think it shouldn't be taxed at all. But
we live in the UK.
We live in the UK, and I don't think Rishi Sunak's listening to this podcast. But I'll try and send it to him. I was trying to get his wife on though, so we'll see how that goes. So let's talk about like the business side. Have you had to do much fundraising? Like, what's your fundraising journey been like?
Yeah, we were bootstrapped. So I found a buy rotation as a side hustle. First 6 months, I was using my salary to pay our senior developer, who's now a CTO, and our intern, who's now a senior community and brand manager.
Oh, I love that.
And our freelance PR, who is still my freelance PR 4.5 years later.
That says a lot as well, though.
Thank you. Yeah, it's unheard of because a lot of people tend to like mix things up when it comes to PRs because they want to use many different black books, but I'm so big on growing together and helping each other's career. I think it's much more fulfilling that way. So I was using my salary while I was working at a hedge fund. That was the last thing I did in finance. And then I started using my savings to bootstrap the business when we launched the app. Developing apps is so expensive, as we all know.
Yeah.
And then finally, I did a friends and family pre-seed round. And that's another good reason to work in the corporate world because I actually had quite a few ex-colleagues put money into the round, which was great. And a vote of confidence in, how highly they regarded me as an ex-colleague and a team worker. And then we finally raised an institutional round. And that was now a couple of years ago. So we are fundraising at the moment. So we are venture backed. And I have to say that whole journey, it's, you know, I used to work in investments, and I can say it's so much more different working from public markets to private markets. Private markets, so like early stage funding and investing, which is what we need to do because we're early stage startup. It's very opaque. And it's very much based on who you know, warm intros. Oh, I grew up in the same part of town as you. I went to the same uni as you. You know, I look like you.
Yeah, it's a lot like, that's a big one. The I look like you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that was particularly challenging as an immigrant, as a woman of color, as a first-time founder, as someone who's not, you know, in the fashion or tech industry. I mean, there are a lot of like things I would say were not particularly helpful in my situation.
No.
So I really focused on my product, which is the platform, but the Buy Rotation app itself. And I'd really recommend that to anyone who's feeling a bit disheartened with the fundraising journey, because it is very tough out there, especially if you're doing consumer. And if you're not talking about AI, then, you know, it's very, very hard to pick up money that easily as people show it to be. So I will say, if you're getting, you know, frustrated, just focus on the product, focus on the actual business, show, you know, how, I guess, capital efficient it is, and that you don't actually need anyone. Because it's funny, when I stopped caring is when people started knocking on my door.
A lot of people say that.
Yeah, the moment I was like,
people feel it.
Screw this shit.
Yeah.
Like, you know what? I know what we are. I know what we stand for. I know what the business can do. If you guys want in, you want in. I you know, I'm giving you a part of my company. It shouldn't feel like you're doing me a favor.
No.
I think the dynamic is so much there. And I was like, I refuse to believe in that dynamic.
And I like the way it seems like you are just like laser focused on your journey and your journey only, because you don't talk about competitors, and we know you have competitors and we know they fundraised, but you haven't mentioned that at all. And I kind of love that.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, you know, even very small habits, like, and my friends know this well. My friends in the industry know this well too. I don't look at other people's Instagram stories. It's just a habit. I'm just, it's not that
I need to get that habit.
Yeah. It's not that I'm not interested in them,
Yeah.
but it's more like, we all have to do some stuff online to keep appearances up. So I'd rather just get to know from the horse's mouth directly how they are when I meet them in person. I think there's a lot of FOMO online. And I think depending on the kind of person you are, you know, maybe you're a very jealous person, it's probably not good for you to look at what other people are doing, because you'll spend time being insecure, feeling bad about yourself. You know, why was I not invited to this? Why am I not doing this? Why am I not taking ice showers at 5 a.m. or something? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, and I'm just like not that kind of person. I know, I see very clearly what Buy Rotation can be and what our mission is. And I'm only interested in that. And I think, I don't mean that in a selfish way, but I think as an entrepreneur, you kind of have to
give
everything to the company.
Yeah.
So that's where I stand, you know, just like that very small, silly habit, I think kind of defines how I am as a person when it comes to my focus.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just launched in the US, right?
Yes, that's correct.
How's that going?
Oh, it's been so great. And the growth has been completely organic too.
Really?
We've actually now broken even there, which I think is insane.
In a short space of time as well.
Less than a year.
Wow.
I think what's really, and the next stage is to be profitable there. And I think what's really interesting there is, you know, traditionally a lot of people say like, you shouldn't launch in another country until you're profitable at home, and we're going to be profitable next year. But I was like, that is true for like most other business models. But for us, opening in the US, we've already done the investment into like proving that our technology can scale up and can have a different region. So why would I waste time? Like all my marketing, all my customer support, all of our engineering, it's all done at HQ.
Yeah.
I have a small office in the US and I have one employee there, and that's it. So I was like, I don't really agree with that. I mean, again, it differs business model to model. But for us, we actually have broken even there very quickly.
But the market is so much bigger there.
That too, but also it really helps that, okay, firstly, like your timing of entry is very important as a marketplace. So it does matter that we're there quick and early to start getting listings on the app, so supply, to start getting users to rent, so demand. So it's really important that we, step foot there and kind of plant our flag.
Yeah.
So that's been really helpful. And then the other thing really is we have had an amazing presence online. And as we know, the UK and US audiences mix so much because culturally they're so similar. So when we were launching in By Rotation, we had a lot of well-known editors in fashion, business, and media tell us, we know By Rotation. We've been waiting for it to launch.
Really?
Are you coming? Yeah, we had Anna Sophia Robb, who's like a famous actor.
Oh, yeah. I'm a big fan. Yeah.
She was like, oh, you guys are finally launching. I've been following you for a while on Instagram. This is great news. It was just sort of very like, I think people were like, well, yeah, it makes sense. Finally coming. That's great.
Yeah. And what's the long-term plan?
The plan
By
is
Rotation, the dream.
Yeah, we're very mission oriented. So we want to transform consumption for good. And when I say that, it's not just limited to fashion. And our name is By Rotation. So it's not limited to clothing, fashion for that matter. And also international expansion. For me, the blueprint of the sharing economy is Airbnb. It's a company I really look up to. And that's the direction we're going more and more towards.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. Well, I have no doubt whatsoever you're going to reach it. I've actually learned so much speaking to you in this space of time as well. I'll be keeping my eyes peeled and earning my income. So
yes,
stay away, Rishi.
Your side hustle.
Yeah, my side hustle that I've not earned £1,000 yet on. But thank you so much for being here. It's been brilliant.
Thank you, Claudia, for making space.